March 27, 1977, a date that forever changed aviation history. What unfolded that day would become the worst air crash the world had ever seen, a tragedy so catastrophic that its effects still echo in the aviation industry today. Two Boeing 747s, the largest passenger planes of their time, collided on a foggy runway at Tenerife's Los Rodeos airport, resulting in unimaginable loss of life. This is the story of how a series of unfortunate events culminated in an aviation disaster like no other. The events of that fateful day were set into motion by a terrorist bombing at the nearby Gran Canaria airport. As a result, flights were diverted to Los Rodeos, a smaller airport unequipped to handle the sudden influx of planes. Among those redirected were KLM Flight 4805 and Pan Am Flight 1736, two Boeing 747 jumbo jets. The airport quickly became congested, and as the hours passed, delays grew longer, frustration mounted, and a sense of urgency began to creep in. Weather conditions at Los Rodeos further complicated the situation. A thick fog rolled in, blanketing the airport and severely reducing visibility. The control tower could no longer see the aircraft on the ground, relying solely on verbal communication and the pilot's reports to manage movements on the taxiways and runways. This lack of visibility would soon prove fatal. As the afternoon wore on, KLM Flight 4805, parked on the tarmac, completed boarding and requested clearance to taxi for takeoff. Meanwhile, Pan Am Flight 1736 was instructed to taxi down the same runway to reach its designated departure point. What happened next was a series of miscommunications, assumptions, and errors that led to a collision of unimaginable proportions. The KLM pilot, eager to depart before exceeding crew duty hours, misunderstood the clearance instructions from air traffic control. Believing he had been cleared for takeoff, he began accelerating down the fog-shrouded runway. At the same time, Pan Am 747, unaware of the KLM jet's movement, was still taxiing on the same runway in the opposite direction. With visibility reduced to near zero, the two massive aircraft were hurtling toward each other at devastating speeds. By the time the Pan Am crew spotted the KLM jet emerging from the fog, it was too late. The Pan Am captain desperately attempted to swerve off the runway, while the KLM pilot tried to lift off prematurely to clear the oncoming aircraft. But disaster was inevitable. The KLM jet's landing gear struck the Pan Am aircraft, tearing through its fuselage and igniting a massive fireball. Both planes were engulfed in flames, and the impact sent debris scattering across the runway. Of the 583 people aboard the two aircraft, only 61 survived, all from the Pan Am flight. The KLM flight had no survivors. In the aftermath of the collision, the aviation community was left reeling. How could such a tragedy occur? Investigators pored over the wreckage, flight recordings, and communication transcripts to uncover the chain of events that led to the disaster. What they found was a perfect storm of factors: poor weather, inadequate airport infrastructure, human error, and miscommunication between pilots and air traffic control. The KLM captain's premature takeoff was a critical error, but the investigation also revealed systemic issues. Air traffic control's instructions were ambiguous, leaving room for misinterpretation. Standardized aviation phrases, now common, were not universally adopted at the time, leading to confusion in critical moments. The lack of ground radar at Los Rodeos meant controllers had no way to track the exact positions of the aircraft in the fog. The Tenerife disaster became a turning point for aviation safety. It prompted sweeping changes, including the adoption of standardized communication protocols, known as ICAO phraseology, to reduce ambiguity. Ground radar systems were implemented at major airports to enhance situational awareness. Crew resource management training was introduced, emphasizing teamwork, communication, and decision-making among flight crews. But even with these advancements, the tragedy at Tenerife serves as a haunting reminder of the fragility of aviation's intricate systems. It underscores the need for constant vigilance, clear communication, and robust infrastructure to ensure the safety of every flight. For the families of the 583 victims, the pain of that day remains immeasurable. These were lives full of promise, journeys abruptly ended by a preventable disaster. Their memory lives on, not only in the hearts of their loved ones, but also in the lessons that continue to shape aviation safety today. The Tenerife airport disaster is more than a tragic chapter in aviation history. It's a stark reminder of the consequences of complacency, miscommunication, and inadequate preparation. It's a story that demands to be told, so we never forget the cost of failing to prioritize safety in the skies.